The trap in the woods. The wind was sharp that night. It cut through Ronan's jacket like a knife. Snow had started falling again, soft and slow, but the cold was biting. He and Elena stood under the low branches of a twisted alien tree, silent, waiting. No movement, Elena whispered, staring at the scanner in her glove. Her breath came out as fog. It's too quiet, Ronan said. Too still. They were on the edge of Zone 4, deep inside the jungle woods of planet E47. The trees here grew thick and crooked, their bark glowing faint blue in the dark. No animals, no bugs, no sounds. That was what made it worse. 3 nights ago, 2 supply scouts went missing. Only broken helmets and blood were found. No tracks. No bodies. The base commander had said it was likely some new beast. Something smart, something hungry, so they set the trap. Ronan looked at the cage in the clearing. Tall metal walls powered by shock pulses and baited with heat packs and food. Anything alive and cold would smell it from far away. The cage was open and ready. Hours passed. Nothing came, just snow and silence, then movement. Ronan saw it first, a shadow between trees, low and slow. He raised his rifle and pointed. Elena watched the scanner spike. Contact. Moving toward the trap. Ronan felt his heart race. He tightened his grip. The shadow stepped closer. It looked small. Wrong shape for a beast. No claws. No horns. It moved like a person. It crawled, forward, then stopped at the cage door. A second shape followed. Smaller, limping. Both figures slid into the cage. The sensors blinked green. Ronan closed the gate. "We got them," Elena said. But there was no growl, no roar, no attack. Just crying. Soft broken sobs came from the cage. Ronan and Elena stepped into the clearing. Rifles up, they walked slowly through the snow. The 2 shapes inside didn't move, just huddled together in the far corner. When they reached the gate, Ronan froze. "They're not beasts," he said. Inside the cage were 2 girls. Alien, blue-skinned. Their bodies were thin, too thin. Their clothes were torn and covered in dirt. They were barefoot. One of them had bright silver eyes, wide with fear. The other looked younger, curled up against her. "What the hell?" Elena whispered. The older girl pulled the younger one closer. She didn't speak. Her hands were shaking, her lips were blue. Her face had bruises. Both of them were trembling. Ronan lowered his weapon. "They're freezing," he said. "We were hunting a monster," Elena said. "Not this." Ronan stepped closer and opened the cage door. The older girl flinched. She raised her arms to protect the younger one. No growls. No attack. Just fear. Ronan knelt and reached into his pack. He pulled out a ration bar and held it. "Out." The girl stared at it. She didn't move. Ronan opened it and broke a piece. He placed it on the floor and backed away. The younger girl sniffed the air. Then she crawled forward and took it. She shoved it in her mouth like she hadn't eaten in days. The older girl followed slowly, her eyes never leaving Ronan. Elena lowered her gun too. "We need to get them back to base," she said. "They'll die out here." Ronan nodded. He wrapped his coat around the younger girl. She was cold as ice. They carried the girls back through the snow, rifles on their backs. Back at the base, things went bad. Commander Bryce stood tall, arms crossed, eyes sharp. "You brought unknowns into my base," he said, "without clearance." "They're starving," Elena said. "They're not a threat." "You don't know what they are," Bryce snapped. "They could be scouts for something worse." "They're just kids," Ronan said. The older girl sat on a cot in the med bay. The younger one was asleep beside her, breathing slowly now under a blanket. Bryce pointed. "They stay in isolation. No contact. And if anything happens, anything, I'll hold you both responsible." Ronan clenched his fists but said nothing. That night, the power flickered in the med bay. Ronan stayed close. He brought more food and water. The older girl looked at him with tired eyes. "What's your name?" he asked gently. She opened her mouth, but no sound came out. Ronan waited. Finally, in a soft voice, she whispered one word. Hunted. Ronan's eyes narrowed. He looked at the scars on her wrists. And he knew then, whatever had chased them out there, it wasn't just a beast. Something had made them prey, and that something was still out there, watching. Who are they? The snowstorm had passed, but tension still hung in the air like smoke. Ronan sat by the medbay door, his rifle resting across his knees. The heat inside the room was warm enough now, but the two alien girls still shivered under the thick blankets. One of them, the older one, kept watching the door, eyes wide, muscles tight. Even in safety, she didn't relax. Ronan had seen fear before. Soldiers in battle, refugees hiding in ruins. But this was something deeper. This was the fear of someone who expected pain, not help. Who believed kindness was a trick. And that belief didn't come easy. It came from experience. Elena entered the room with a scanner in her hand. She didn't speak at first. Instead, she knelt beside the older girl and gently moved the scanner across her arm. The girl flinched but didn't pull away. The screen showed results Ronan wasn't ready for. She's badly malnourished, Elena said quietly. Bone loss, infection in her leg, internal bruising. They haven't eaten properly in weeks. Ronan looked at her. How old do you think they are? The little one? Maybe 10. The older one? 12. Maybe 13. He stared at the scars on their skin. Not random injuries, not accidents, straight lines, old burns. One scar around the neck like from a collar. They were prisoners, he said softly. Worse, Elena replied, voice low. Look. She held out her wrist scanner again and showed Ronan a blinking red symbol on the medical scan. What's that? He asked. A tag, Elena said. An old one, from a galactic hunter caste. These girls, they were marked as prey. Ronan felt a chill crawl up his spine. You mean like animals? Elena nodded. Yes, there's a species called the Vakshar, elite hunters. They don't just hunt animals. They hunt intelligent life, for sport. It's illegal now, banned by all major systems, but some of them still do it. In secret. Ronan looked back at the girls. The younger one was still asleep, her hand gripping the blanket like she feared it would vanish. The older one hadn't blinked since they entered. What kind of people do this to children? He asked. Not people, Elena said. Monsters. The door hissed open. Commander Bryce stepped in with 2 guards. He looked at the girls, then at Ronan and Elena. You've had your time, he said coldly. We're moving them to a holding cell. Ronan stood. They're not prisoners. They're unauthorized aliens on a secure human base. That makes them a threat. They're children. Not human children. The words hit Ronan like ice. He saw the older girl flinch as if she understood. Maybe she did. We need to help them, Elena said. We can't hand them over or treat them like enemies. Bryce narrowed his eyes. We received a transmission from orbit. A Vakshar ship sent a message, encrypted. They claim to be searching for stolen property, and they'll be arriving in less than 12 hours. Ronan stepped forward. You're not thinking of giving the girls to them? Bryce didn't answer. Instead, he turned and walked away. The door closed. Ronan sat down again, heart heavy. What are we going to do? Elena asked. Ronan looked at the older girl. Her eyes met his. Not with hope, but with the quiet, hollow look of someone who had seen too much. We're going to protect them, he said. Elena didn't ask how, not yet. Maybe because deep down she already knew the cost. Later that night, the base lights dimmed under power-saving protocols. Ronan stayed by the medbay. He couldn't sleep. Every creak in the wall, every gust of wind outside sounded like footsteps, and then the sensors buzzed. A red light flashed, movement outside the wall. Ronan rose to his feet and checked the monitor. Something was near the fence, moving fast and low. Not human, not like the girls. Too smooth, too perfect. He tapped into the security cam. His blood ran cold. A cloaked figure, tall, armored, with glowing yellow eyes, stood just beyond the wire. It didn't try to enter, it just stared, like it was waiting. Then, it vanished into the snow. Ronan turned toward the medbay door. The older girl was sitting up now, wide awake. "They found us," she whispered, and for the first time, her voice didn't shake. It was not fear he heard, it was warning. The hunt begins again. The morning came with silence, but not peace. Snow covered the base like a cold blanket, untouched, too still. The trees beyond the wire fence didn't move. No birds, no animals. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath. Ronan didn't trust it. He paced the medbay corridor, boots thudding softly on the metal floor. Elena was inside, running final checks on the older girl's injuries. The younger one, still weak but stronger than before, sat on the edge of the cot, her big dark eyes watching the door like it might disappear at any moment. "Her name is Sally," Elena said quietly as she came out. "She told me while you were sleeping." Ronan blinked. "She spoke again?" Elena nodded. "And the little one is Una. They're sisters." He looked through the window at them. The bond between the two was clear. How Una leaned into Sayali's side, how Sayali never relaxed until Una was safe. They had survived something terrible, something that had ripped their world apart. And now somehow they had fallen into his. Before Ronan could respond, the base alarm blared, sharp and loud. Red lights pulsed overhead. "Perimeter breach," someone shouted over the comms. "Sector 4, motion sensors triggered. Contact incoming." Ronan grabbed his rifle and bolted outside, Elena right behind him. At the north wall, 3 soldiers were already in position, rifles aimed toward the snowy trees. The gate had been opened, only slightly, but the snow just inside was marked, not with footprints, with long, shallow lines, like something had crawled or slithered. "Whatever it was, it came and left fast," the lead soldier said. "We didn't catch it on cams, but it got close. Real close." Ronan knelt beside the marks. They weren't random. They were deliberate, watching, testing, hunting. He returned to the medbay and found Sally sitting upright, staring at the wall. "They came?" she said before he could ask. Ronan crouched in front of her. "Who came?" Sally's voice was steady. "The Vakshar." "How many?" "Too many." Her hands were balled into fists, trembling slightly. Ronan looked at Elena. "We need to move them. They're not safe here anymore." "Move them? Where?" He hesitated, then said, "There's an old cargo hold in the east hangar, buried under supplies. If we hide them there, they might be able to slip away during the next supply shuttle run. Commander Bryce won't allow it. Then, he won't know." That night, while the base lights dimmed under curfew, Ronan led the sisters through the back corridors, away from cameras, away from questions. The hangar was cold and half abandoned, its corners piled with broken crates and old equipment. He cleared a spot in the back, tucked beneath a large power container. Blankets, food, water. He brought everything they'd need for a few days. Sally looked at him as he handed her the ration packs. "Why help us?" she asked. Ronan paused. "Because no one helped us when we needed it," he said. "Not like this, not when it mattered." Elena crouched beside him. "We don't leave people behind even if they're not human." Una crawled into the blanket pile and fell asleep in seconds. Sayali sat beside her, still tense. Outside, the snow began to fall again. But this time, it carried something else. Fear. Hours passed. Then came the second breach. Alarms screamed again. Only this time they were followed by gunfire. Ronan burst from his bunk and ran for the gate. Smoke rose from the southern side of the fence. 2 guards were down, 1 was missing. Visual contact, a soldier shouted, pointing into the trees. Ronan raised his scope and froze. He saw it. A figure, tall and armored in dark gray, standing in the tree line. The armor shimmered, cloaked, hard to focus on. Glowing yellow eyes locked onto him across the snow. A Vakshar hunter. And it wasn't running. It was waiting. The hunter slowly raised its hand, opened its palm, and dropped something in the snow. Then it turned and vanished into the mist. Ronan moved forward, rifle ready, and approached the object. It was a helmet. Human. He picked it up and felt the blood drain from his face. It belonged to Sergeant Hale, his friend, his teammate. His throat tightened. He turned back toward the base, holding the helmet high. "They're not just scouting," he said aloud. "They're sending a message." Elena joined him a minute later. "They know where we are." Ronan nodded. "And they're playing with us." He looked up at the stars, above the snowy forest sky. "We're not hunting beasts anymore," he whispered. "We're being hunted, and the worst part? No one at command seemed ready for what was coming next. But Ronan was. He had made a choice: protect the girls, no matter what it cost. A broken deal and a rising fire, the base was no longer a place of safety. It was a cage filled with fear, and every breath inside it felt borrowed. Ronan stood near the window of the medbay, gripping the cold metal frame as he stared at the snowy field beyond. His jaw was tight, eyes locked on the line of trees where the Vakshar had last been seen. For the past 6 hours, nothing had moved. No sounds, no birds. Even the wind had gone still. But Ronan knew better. Predators didn't need noise to kill. They needed silence. Behind him, Elena paced back and forth, biting her lip. She was holding a datapad, reading through the encoded message that Command had just decrypted. It wasn't good news. "They're calling it a misunderstanding," she said bitterly. "The Vakshar are claiming the girls are stolen property, part of a sanctioned hunt." Ronan turned sharply. "There's no such thing. That kind of hunting is outlawed. Not on their world. Their laws say it's legal. They say the girls escaped from a licensed hunt zone and we interfered." Ronan stepped closer, voice low and tight. "They're not animals." "Tell that to the council," Elena snapped. "Because Command just gave the order. We're to turn the girls over by sunset." Ronan felt a fire rise in his chest. "And if we refuse?" Elena looked down. "Then the Vakshar will consider this an act of war." The words felt heavy, like a hammer striking steel. Ronan moved toward the supply room, slamming his fist against the wall on the way. He had served in battles. He had lost friends. He had seen alien cities burning, had walked over rubble soaked in blood. But this was different. This wasn't war. This was surrender. He went back to the hangar, where the girls were hiding. The smell of oil and rust filled the air, and the soft hum of power lines buzzed in the background. Sayeli looked up as he approached, her expression unreadable. "They're coming for you," he said. She didn't flinch. Instead, she gently pulled Una closer, wrapping an arm around her shoulders. The younger girl slept, unaware of the danger pressing in like a tightening noose. "Will you give us to them?" Sayeli asked. Ronan knelt down slowly. "No." She watched him closely. "You would fight your own leaders for us?" Ronan's voice didn't shake. "Yes." Sayeli studied him for a long moment, then nodded. "Then we'll fight too." "You don't have to," Ronan said gently. "You're just kids." "Not anymore," she said. "Not since the day they took our mother and left us in the snow." Ronan's hands clenched into fists. Elena arrived a moment later, carrying a small case. Inside were stun pistols, ration packs, and a plasma knife. She handed the blade to Sayeli. "If you're going to survive," Elena said, "you'll need to know how to use this." Sayeli took the knife with steady hands. The weight didn't seem strange to her. Ronan checked his wrist scanner. "We can't stay here. There's a backup beacon system in the mountains to the west. Old, but powerful enough to reach orbit. If we activate it, maybe someone will come. Someone not afraid of the Vakshar." "How far is it?" Sayeli asked. 2 days, Elena replied. "If the snow stays light." Ronan opened a panel and pulled out heat cloaks and climbing gloves. "We'll move during the night, through the ridge path. Less likely to be spotted." Before they could leave, the lights in the hangar flickered. A high-pitched tone echoed through the base speakers. An alert not used in years. Internal breach. Ronan turned toward Elena, heart racing. They're already here. He grabbed the girls and pulled them behind a stack of crates. A moment later, the hangar door exploded inward. A cloaked figure stepped through, silent and fast. The Vakshar had arrived. Without thinking, Ronan grabbed a flare canister and slammed it into the floor. The blinding flash lit up the room. The hunter growled, its armor sparking from the overload. Elena fired twice, hitting the thing in the shoulder. It staggered, then vanished again. Cloaking system flickering like a broken shadow. "Go!" Ronan shouted. They ran through the back door, through the tunnels that fed into the outer hills. Outside, snow whipped at their faces as they climbed the slope behind the base. Sirens howled far below them. But up here, it was only wind and fire in their lungs. Una clung to Siley's side. The older girl moved like she had done it 1,000 times. No panic. Only purpose. Ronan led them into the forest, feet crunching, through the frozen underbrush. Their breath came out in clouds and their hands stung from cold, but no one stopped. Not now. Because behind them, death was following. And ahead of them, just maybe, there was still hope. The long climb the forest behind them was burning, not with fire but with movement. Unseen and silent. Shadows that moved faster than thought. The Vakshar were no longer hiding. They had started their hunt. But they weren't chasing the group to kill. They wanted fear. They wanted the prey to run. Ronan had seen it in their tactics, every attack, every appearance carefully chosen, always just close enough to be seen, never close enough to strike. The Vakshar played with their victims like cats played with mice, and Siley knew it. She walked beside Ronan now, shoulders tight, eyes constantly scanning the tree line. Una clung to her back, too weak to walk on her own. Her little hands were wrapped tightly around her sister's neck, but she didn't complain. Not once, not even when the wind bit into her face or when the snow crusted her skin like ice. Ronan led the way through the canyon trails, heading west into the cliffs. Somewhere high in those jagged peaks was an old emergency beacon station. Abandoned, decades ago, but rumored to still work if powered correctly. If they could reach it, maybe they could call for help beyond this system. Elena followed behind, rifle ready, watching their tracks to make sure no one was closing in. "How much longer?" Siley asked, her breath short. "We reached the base of the mountain by nightfall," Ronan said. "We climb from there." Siley nodded without complaint. She hadn't said much since the escape. Her eyes had grown darker, older, not in age but in experience. There was a fire building in her, a fire the Vakshar had lit but would never control again. By dusk, they reached the edge of the cliffs. Towering walls of black stone rose before them, half covered in snow and frozen mist. Old metal bolts stuck out from the rock, remains of an ancient supply line. The beacon station was at the top near the peak, buried in the skeleton of an old observation post. Ronan turned to Elena. "We climb in shifts, too steep for all of us at once. And too exposed," she added. "They'll see us. We don't have a choice." He strapped Una to his back and began the first ascent, climbing slowly but with practiced hands. The rock was slippery, cold, and unforgiving. Every grip felt like frozen steel. Every gust of wind threatened to throw them off the wall. Halfway up, he looked down. Elena was helping Siley find footing. The girl was light, but the climb was brutal, especially for someone who had barely eaten for days. They reached a ledge just before night fully swallowed the sky. Exhausted, they made a small camp behind a ridge, lighting no fire. They ate cold, ration bars, drank melted snow, and sat close together under thermal blankets. "They're near," Siley whispered suddenly. Ronan looked up. "How do you know?" "I can feel them watching." Elena scanned the area, but the tracker showed nothing. Siley didn't argue. She just held Una tighter and said no more. Ronan knew better than to doubt her. In the early hours, they climbed again. Ice cracked beneath their boots. Sharp winds cut across their faces like knives. One wrong step, one missed grip, and they would fall into the canyon below. Una stirred once on Ronan's back and whispered, "Mama used to carry me like this." Ronan didn't answer. He just kept climbing. When they reached the beacon station at last, the sky was blood-red with dawn, and every breath burned in their lungs. The station was a crumbling tower of rusted metal and shattered glass. Snow had piled up inside its walls, and the control panel was buried beneath broken panels and dust, but it was there. Ronan dropped to his knees and started digging. Elena helped clear the ice. They found the core unit, intact but dead. No power, no signal, no hope. "We came all this way," Elena began. Ronan shook his head. "No, we're not done." He turned to the girls. "Do you have anything at all that generates power, even a small charge?" Sally reached into the folds of her cloak and pulled out a crystal pendant. "Our mother gave this to us," she said. "It glows when we sleep." Ronan took it carefully. The crystal hummed faintly in his palm, warm, alive. "It's a bioreactive shard," Elena whispered. "It could power the beacon for a few seconds." Ronan connected the crystal to the old panel. Sparks flew. Lights blinked. The tower groaned, as if waking from a long sleep. He hit the signal button. A pulse shot into the sky, blue and bright. It vanished into the clouds. Ronan leaned back, heart pounding. "We did it," but Sally didn't smile. Her eyes were fixed on the horizon. 3 cloaked shapes stood at the edge of the ridge, silent and still. The Vakshar had followed them. And now, the final game was about to begin. "What makes a monster?" The wind screamed across the mountaintop like a warning too late to matter. The sky above was streaked with early morning light, the kind that made frost sparkle. But down on the ledge of the old beacon tower, the air felt heavy, dead, like something sacred had been disturbed. Ronan stood in front of the girls, one hand on the grip of his rifle, the other stretched out to keep Sally and Una behind him. Elena crouched to the side, eye locked to her scope. Her breathing was calm, but her fingers trembled. 3 Vakshar hunters stood at the edge of the cliff, unmoving like statues of bone and steel. Their armor was dark, lined with glowing red veins. Cloaked in shimmering camouflage, they seemed to bleed in and out of the rock, more shadow than substance. Behind them, the rising sun cast long, broken shapes, like teeth. The tallest of them stepped forward. Its mask clicked open in a smooth hiss, revealing a pale face with no mouth, just lines and slits where expression should be. A translator device buzzed to life at its throat. "You have what belongs to us," it said in a voice that echoed like many voices crushed into one. Ronan didn't flinch. "They're not property. They're children. They are tagged, hunted, claimed. They are alive," Ronan growled. "You don't get to own life." The Vakshar tilted its head, studying him. "You don't understand. This is our way. Their kind was bred for this purpose. There is no shame. Only order." Ronan lowered his rifle slightly and stepped forward. "And what about their mother, the others you threw into your games? Did they feel the same peace you speak of when they begged for mercy?" The creature didn't blink. "Mercy is weakness." Behind him, Sally took a step forward. Ronan tried to block her, but she moved with surprising speed. Her voice was sharp and cold. "And that's why your kind will die alone." The hunter's head turned toward her. "You speak now?" Sally nodded slowly. "I've always spoken." "I just didn't waste breath on monsters," the Vakshar hissed. Then, without warning, one of them raised its spear and fired. The plasma bolt flashed like lightning, headed straight for Sally. But Ronan moved first. He threw himself in front of her. The bolt struck his arm, burning through cloth and skin. He fell hard, pain blinding. But he gritted his teeth, forced himself up, and raised his rifle again. Elena's shot cracked through the air. One of the hunters dropped instantly, its helmet shattered. Chaos erupted. The second hunter charged, leaping across the snow like a beast. Sally didn't run. She pulled the plasma knife Elena had given her and met it head-on. The impact knocked her backward, but the blade found flesh. Ronan, half blind from pain, fired again and again. The shot sparked against armor, forcing the leader back. Elena rolled across the ridge, taking cover behind a half-frozen crate. "They're faster than we trained for," she shouted. Ronan was bleeding, snow-soaked red beneath him. But he kept shooting. Una, huddled behind the tower's base, screamed as the third Vakshar came for her, tall, silent, and armed with a clawed gauntlet. It reached for her and stopped because Saley was there. She didn't scream. She didn't hesitate. She lunged with her blade and buried it into the alien's knee joint. The Vakshar stumbled, gave a strange guttural sound of confusion, and Ronan, now crawling, fired a final shot into its chest. When the last hunter fell, the ridge was silent again, just wind, breath, and the faint flicker of the emergency beacon behind them. Ronan collapsed to his knees, clutching his arm. Saley stood over one of the fallen hunters, chest rising and falling like a storm was inside her. Her face was hard, but her hands shook, not from fear, but from the release of it. Elena ran to Ronan's side. "You're hit. Bad." "I've been worse," he muttered through gritted teeth. Una crawled out of hiding and hugged her sister tightly. Ronan looked up at the sky. The beacon still blinked. "They'll come," he whispered. "Someone heard us." Elena nodded, checking the signal tracker. A response just pinged. "Allied cruiser, 20 minutes out." Ronan smiled faintly. "We made it." But Saeli wasn't smiling. She walked over to the fallen Vakshar leader. It was still alive. Barely. Its breathing was slow, damaged. It stared up at her, expression unreadable. "You are strong," it said. "Too strong for prey." Saley knelt beside it. "We were never prey," she whispered. "You just made us forget that." The hunter's eyes dimmed, and then it was gone. Ronan watched her in silence. He no longer saw a frightened girl. He saw a survivor, a fighter, and maybe something more. Something the galaxy had forgotten existed in her kind. Spark of defiance, and the will to burn down everything that had tried to cage it. No longer prey, the rescue cruiser arrived with a thunder of engines that shook the mountain peaks and scattered snow into the air like ash. Sleek and gray with deep blue insignias, it hovered low over the old beacon tower, casting a massive shadow that seemed to push the past away. Soldiers in full armor descended on anti-grav ropes, weapons ready, expecting war. But what they found was silence. Ronan sat slumped against the base of the ruined tower, his wounded arm wrapped in cloth soaked. Dark red, Elena stood beside him, rifle lowered, body tense but breathing steady. Una slept curled up in Saley's lap, wrapped in blankets that looked too thin for the cold but had become shields stronger than steel. And Saley, she wasn't the same girl anymore. She sat upright, alert, not scared, not broken. She held the plasma knife across her knees, not to fight, but because it felt like part of her now, like a scar, forged into something useful. When the first rescue officer approached, Saley rose to her feet. "Stand down," he ordered, motioning to the others. "They're not hostiles." Another officer spotted the Vakshar corpses piled near the cliffside and muttered, "What the hell happened here?" Ronan smiled faintly. "Justice." On board the cruiser, Ronan lay on a medical bed as nanobots worked to repair the damage in his arm. Elena sat nearby, bruised but unbroken, watching the girls through a clear glass wall. Saeli and Una had been given clean clothes, food, warm beds, but they hadn't touched any of it yet. They were waiting. Not for safety, for answers. An officer stepped into the room holding a datapad. He nodded to Ronan. "Your report's already being reviewed by High Command. Your actions here, well, they're not sure whether to court-martial you or give you a medal." Ronan chuckled through the pain. "Let them decide when they meet. The girls," the officer hesitated. "And the Vakshar? Won't be hunting anyone ever again. Good." He left them in silence. Elena finally spoke. Do you think they'll be safe now? The girls? Ronan turned his head to look, through the glass. No, Elena frowned. No, they won't be safe until their story is told, until someone hears them and remembers. He slowly sat up, groaning with effort. We saved 2 lives, but there are others still out there, still hunted, still waiting. You're not going to let it go, are you? Elena asked. Ronan shook his head. Never. A week later, in the human council chambers orbiting Earth's 3rd colony, Ronan and Elena stood side by side before a room full of suits and officials, and between them stood Celie. Not hiding, not shaking. She faced them with her chin raised, wearing a translator collar and her mother's crystal necklace. Still glowing faintly from the cold, she spoke slowly, each word clear, each sentence a strike. We were born in silence, trained to run, punished for surviving. We were never taught to speak because no one cared what prey thought. The room held its breath, but a human soldier looked at me and saw something else. She paused, letting the silence settle. He called me alive. Ronan felt something, heavy rise in his chest. Celie looked around the room. I don't need revenge. I don't want pity. I want no more children left in the snow. A councilwoman wiped her eyes and nodded. The vote passed within the hour. A galactic ban on Vakshar hunting games. Immediate rescue operations for tagged survivors. And protection for Celie and Una under human guardianship. 3 months later, on a quiet world with red trees and clear skies, Ronan stood outside a small school building. Kids laughed in the distance. The sun warmed the metal roofs and wind rustled through the leaves. Celie stood at the top of the hill, training with a wooden staff, her movements focused and clean. Not wild, not angry. Balanced. Ronan walked up, with a smile. You ready? She nodded. I think so. He handed her something wrapped in cloth. She opened it slowly. Inside was a pin, half a star, half a human hand, melted from the Vakshar armor they had taken from the mountain. What is it? She asked. A new symbol, Ronan said. For a new kind of protector. For me? Ronan nodded. If you still want to be a soldier. Celie smiled, the first real smile since he had met her. Not a soldier, she said. Something better. Una came running up with a drawing in her hand, 2 stick figures holding hands, one tall, one short, both smiling under a strange star. She held it up proudly. Ronan took it and knelt beside her. Who were they? Una giggled. Me and Celie. And this? He asked, pointing to the glowing thing above them. That's home. Far away in a quiet chamber hidden beneath a ruined Vakshar base, a screen blinked to life. An ancient message began to play, of screaming prey, of laughter from masked hunters, and then it shut off. Deleted, scrubbed, erased, forever. Because somewhere in the stars, prey had become something else. And monsters. They had learned fear.